Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, your host here at Behind the Star, and I am the official storyteller here at the Sheriff's Office. I know it's an odd title, but that's what I do here. I'm also the host of the podcast, and thanks again for joining us. We just passed our 10,000th download, and so I'm really happy about that. So if you like what you hear, tell your friends, and here on Behind the Star, we talk about all the things that are going on here at the Sheriff's Office. We interview civilians, we interview sworn personnel, and today we're on location. Normally I'm at Ops doing this, which is kind of near downtown, but I'm at the evidence, which I'm really excited about this. And so I'm here with the evidence manager, Gene Bernal. Welcome to Behind the Star.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Glad to be here with you.
So I say evidence. I say I'm in the evidence building. Maybe tell me exactly where we are. Not exactly where we are, because I know we don't generally kind of blast it out there where our evidence building is, but maybe just tell everybody, what exactly do you do and what is the evidence sort of area?
Well, the evidence is very simple. We have a big warehouse, or in this warehouse we keep all of our evidence. So any evidence, any found property, any collections, anything that a deputy may come around to that basically, if they don't know what to do with it, they bring it to us.
Okay.
And so we warehouse it, we hold on to it, and then eventually we get rid of it. So that's the bottom line, but I'm sure we'll get into more specifics as we go.
So let's sort of dissect what you just said there. So I think most people understand that when a crime happens, deputies and police officers, they collect evidence, or most of the time they do, but that evidence has to go somewhere because at some point there might be a trial. Is that kind of how it works?
That's correct. Let me just walk very simple. You know, you have a deputy or an officer out on the street. So for our purposes, they're deputies. Deputy goes out, and let's say he goes to a house burglary. Somebody broke into your house. While that burglar was there, he left behind his shoes. Well, that deputy may collect those shoes.
Not a very good burglar, this person.
We've had a lot. And let me just add that if you can imagine it, we have it.
Okay. Although maybe a very considerate burglar if they're going to take their shoes off before they go through your house.
One of the things that happens is you'll walk around with loose shoes, and they take off running, and the shoes fall behind.
Okay. So they they leave their Cinderella style. They leave their slippers behind.
The glass slippers are left behind. The deputy gets there. The victim says, "Hey, they broke into my house. They stole my TV. But hark, here's some shoes that don't belong to us." And so that deputy will collect those shoes, put them in a bag, eventually drop them off, bring it to us.
Okay.
We catalog them, we give it a location, and we say, okay, it goes in location 1, and there it sits until that evidence is needed.
So yeah, maybe even go deeper into that. So the deputy brings it here to this warehouse, and they have to. I mean, they don't just throw it in a bag and they throw it in the warehouse somewhere. I mean, as you said, it's all cataloged and everything.
It's simple but meticulous. And so, I think the easiest thing you can do, and nowadays you go online. So last week I was at Home Depot and I was looking for a hole post digger, and I couldn't figure out where. So I go online and it tells me it's an aisle 19, bin 42. I'm making this up, but bin 42, and sure enough, when I go to that location, there it is. Same thing happens here. When that deputy comes in, he puts a label on it. The label's got a case number. We give it a location. We give it our own number system, and we say this particular item is going to be in row AA, section 2, location 5 inside of this box. So we specifically identify where that is. We have probably over 500,000 items here. And so, as you can imagine, if we put it in the wrong place, it's going to be hard to find.
Oh, yeah. And before we did the podcast here, before we started recording, I got a little tour of the evidence warehouse, and to me it reminds me of like the very last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you walk in and there's just boxes and boxes and boxes from floor to ceiling all over this warehouse, because as you said, I mean, when a crime occurs, which happens all the time, and evidence is collected, it has to go somewhere, and eventually it ends up here, and not all evidence is small. I mean, there's just there's just evidence that is all different kinds of sizes here.
Let me give you an example. We could have something as little as a fingernail clipping.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
we had a homicide, and they took and they clipped the fingernails for DNA or evidence. Okay, we could have something. We got some air conditioners back there that half the size of my office,
Wow.
and so it goes from little to big and everything in the middle. And so if you can imagine it again, imagine an item, chances are we have it other than cars and airplanes and those large things that we keep somewhere else. But here, you know, we could keep anything. Somebody comes out to your house, throws a rock through the window. There's DNA on the rock for some reason. They put the rock in. Deputy's out on the street. He arrests Johnny. Johnny's got $1,000 with him. We take his $1,000, put it in evidence. And so, and for the money's sake, obviously, we take it to the bank so that we don't keep any money here.
And eventually, I want to get into all these different parts of the warehouse.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just a big warehouse with boxes, because some things need to be kept cold, some things need to
Correct.
be kept in secure locations. So I want to get to that, but before I do, so after it goes into evidence and it's put in a box or wherever it belongs here in the warehouse. How long is it there for? I mean, is there like a certain time, like, okay, after a year, it's out of here because we got to make space?
The best answer I can give you is yes.
Okay.
And so, you know, we got stuff in here that'll stay 3 months. We got stuff here that'll stay a lifetime.
Okay.
And so depending on the circumstances, and there is no magic formula. Each case is individual. And so, you know, there may be some stuff here that it's here 3 months, and after 3 months, we throw it out. There is stuff in here that will be here forever. And so mostly when you think about the bigger the crime, the longer the time.
Okay. When you say the bigger the crime, maybe a worse crime or one that got
Correct.
maybe more attention.
No, the worst crime.
Okay.
And so a murder will certainly have information here longer than, you know, found property out on the street. And it happens all the time. Deputies driving on the street, somebody flags them down and says, hey, somebody left this bicycle here. Deputy grabs that bicycle, brings it down here. We keep it in our house 3, 4, 6 months later. A lot of times what we do is we donate it. And that's one of the things, you know, if you have a charity and you want stuff donated, we are a great source for that stuff. And so it certainly helps our community. You know, we have a couple charities out there that routinely reach out to us. Hey, we need bikes. And so what we do is we give them a lot of 25, 50 bikes. They go throw them. They throw out the bad ones. They keep the good ones. They auction them, etc. Make a little money on the side.
And then, but some of the other parts of the evidence, it's kept here until maybe a trial, and then it can go away. Or?
Yeah, and if it's related, and so let me divide. Let me go back step in. We have found property and we have evidence property. So let's assume for a minute it's evidence. It's part of a crime. That will stay here until the trial is over, and the deputy in that case says, you know what, we no longer need that. Okay. As a deputy, they're out there saying, you know, maybe there's an appeal coming up. I know that this one is on appeal. So if it's on appeal, it's going to hold on. This guy got sentenced to 10 years, but we know, you know, he's got 8 or 9 more other cases. And so again, it's very difficult to say it'll be here X amount of time. The best case scenario is, you know, we get it, we get rid of it. But that's just not realistic. And this is why we have a very large warehouse here where we store everything.
Does the evidence ever get to go back to the person? Let's say maybe it's proved that they were not guilty or maybe something else. And do they ever come back and say, you know, you got my iPod, I want it back?
Absolutely. We do that as a matter of routine. Very, very often, you know, the property will be found. So let's just, for argument's sake, you know, I'm going to give you a very wild scenario. Somebody finds a briefcase with $1 million in it. And it happens to have
that's my briefcase.
It happens to have the owner's ID in it.
Okay.
And so the person who found it has the right to say, I want that property if nobody comes through it. We go out of our way to try to find the owner of that property. Once we identify the owner of the property, once they've gone through all the check marks that they need to go through to prove it's their property, we'll return it to them. Because at the end of the day, the less stuff we have here, the better.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much space here too.
Absolutely.
And so, all right. So as I said, I got a little tour before we started this podcast, and so as you mentioned, there's bicycles there and backpacks, and I saw some television sets, a little bit of everything. I mean, as you said, imagine it's probably been evidence or will be evidence or has been evidence, but there's also some different parts of the warehouse. And when I first walked in, I was shown the cooler.
Right.
And so I had no idea. I mean, I don't know why I don't think of these things, but I had no idea that was even a thing. So maybe explain, why is there a cooler here? Not just a cooler, but a freezer as well.
Well, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you go back to the back and you open that walk-in cooler, and that's exactly what we have. have. We have a restaurant quality walk-in cooler and a walk-in freezer. So depending on the items in there, blood is an example. Blood is a biological item, and you need to keep it refrigerated. You don't necessarily want to freeze it, but you do. And so there are items that we freeze, and there are items that we cool depending on the circumstances, depending on where it came from, what are we going to do with it, etc. And so, yeah, we have a walk-in cooler back there that we could use typically as a restaurant cooler back there.
And is that mostly, like you said, like human tissue and blood and
anything usually that it's biological,
okay.
So urine, semen, blood, body parts, although we really don't have many body parts back there. But, we could have fingernails, and we could have, it's hard to say in there, but we could have a piece of a finger in there, something of that nature.
I heard there was some fetuses back there too.
There are parts, yes, correct.
And a puppy or a dog?
That's what they tell. I've never seen it.
Okay, all right, but it could be that's where you would put it.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Because it's part of evidence. It could be part of a crime, and it needs to be kept in the state that it was found in. So in 2 years, it's not gone.
I'm going to make up a scenario. Let's say that we get a gallon of milk for whatever reason, and there's something in there that's evidentiary. We don't want to put that out in a warehouse. A gallon of milk in Florida warehouse at 90 degrees won't last very long. So we may put that in the refrigerator, keep it at least fresh or frozen so it won't spoil.
Okay.
And so, that's a scenario, obviously a little far-fetched, but it's a possibility.
And then another part of the warehouse that is probably a busy part is the drug part. I mean, part of crime, there are certain crime or drugs that are illicit crimes, and so we collect that as evidence as well.
Right. Drugs are our bread and butter. I mean, we have drugs coming in every day. We have a whole bunch of different units out there collecting drugs for whatever reason, and they all end up here. So eventually we store it, and we X amount of time later, we take it, we identify it as destructible, we put it into a container, it gets burnt, goes to an incinerator, it gets poofed, and that's the end of the drug. So we do that consistently.
And so the evidence with drugs, it's the same process as if I were to bring a TV in here,
Absolutely.
or is it a little bit different?
It's a little different because the disposal is a little different. And so, we have a TV in here. The TV at the end of the process, we will either take that TV and destroy it at the landfill. A lot of times what happens is, and here's great for the taxpayer in me, that some of that stuff is recycled. And so we have your department needs a TV because obviously you guys watch TV, you watch the news, and so the sheriff's office could go out and spend $1,000 on a TV. The other side is they give us a call and say, hey, do you have a TV available? And last 3 months ago,
you're like, what size do you want?
Yeah,
what
we
brand do you want?
We have an 85-inch TV back there. That we could easily put in your office. It's
Sheriff probably calls dibs on the big
one. Absolutely. He's got that. But it's a cost savings. A lot of times we have tools and stuff. Our SWAT team comes in here and gets tools, and they get chainsaws and they get all those things. The emergency response teams will come in here and get equipment as well. And so we are constantly, and one of the things that we do is, we'll give you an example. The mounted unit came out and said, hey, we really need a lawnmower. We want a big lawnmower. Well, we seized the lawnmower a couple months ago. So that was on my, can we get rid of list? And as soon as that one's available, we'll call the mounted unit and say, hey, here's a lawnmower for you. There's a process and paperwork and signatures have to happen, but at the end of the day, they end up with that lawnmower.
So going back to the drug part of the building, it's in a secure part of the building. It's not just sitting on the ground where anybody can kind of grab it. It's in a secure vault. Because I walked in there and there was a few people working in there, and you walk in and it smells like certain drugs in there. Not that I know, but I know. And but you said it's much better than it used to be.
It is. Well, when a couple years back we had that stuff in here, and it was we seized a lot of marijuana.
Yeah. And
marijuana has that very unique nasty rotten smell. And you'd walk in there and it was just overwhelming. And so we used some seized funds, and we were able to buy some equipment. So we got a very sophisticated air cleaning machine in there that processes the air and gets rid of a good percentage of that. Although you smelled it when you walked in.
A little bit, yeah.
It's probably 1,000% better than it was back.
It was like a Grateful Dead concert
before.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was money that was seized money that we used for that. And so one of the things that we always try to do is do the best we can for the citizens of our city in our county. And so we do the best we can to try to recycle material, use what we have.
We don't recycle the drugs, though.
No. Drugs get burned. Yeah, drugs get burned.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, when you showed me some of the boxes, I mean, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of different kinds.
Absolutely,
and some of it you wouldn't even know it's drugs because it looks like candy.
Right. As I showed you, in there I took out a bag that looked like little marshmallows. We've had tours in here, and we don't give public tours, but we've had other people come in here and listen. Oh, this is something I would put in my hot cocoa. Well, if you did, you'd be flying around it for a while. And so the thing about drugs, they change all the time, and so the deputies out on the street really got to be on their toes to say this just doesn't look right. Here we have an adult walking around with a big Ziploc full of marshmallows. That's just not typical. And so, we've got to get creative and stay one step ahead of the criminals.
I think the other thing that was interesting is the safe, because you had mentioned there was some fentanyl, and fentanyl is so dangerous that, you can touch it and it can really harm you. And I'm sure that's probably a new thing that you had to install because, 20, 30 years ago, I assume fentanyl wasn't a big deal like it is now. And so that's just how we've had to change with the times.
We have to change every day. One of the things that we try to do here is obviously keep up with the times, as you say, fentanyl. So I'll give you an example. When I was a young officer, you got drugs on the street, you put it in a little bag, and that was the end of it. Nowadays, with fentanyl, you double and triple and quadruple bag it. When it gets here, we put it into a sealed container. That sealed container gets put into a locked safe that only a few people have combination, simply to keep it away from the environment, to keep it away from our folks. Last week, we got a 5-gallon drum of HGB liquid.
Wow.
It was leaking a little bit, so we have spent, 3 or 4 days trying to find an airtight container to put that stuff in so we can keep it. And so, we've spent the last 3 or 4 days on the phone calling biohazard companies, and I think we may have found a source. But it's just not something that is available. It's not, I can't go down to Home Depot and buy a container to hold HEB, so we got to get creative.
Explain what is that? HGB?
Most people know it as the date drug.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a liquid form drug that I'm not exactly sure, what it does to you, but it's
once again, you can't just leave it sitting out. You gotta be secure with all of it. So going to the other side, I mean, a lot of times when it comes to drugs, there's also guns involved. And so just like the drugs, there's a very secure part of this building where drugs or guns are kept because, during crimes they're found and they're logged as evidence. But there's lots of guns here too, but they're all in secure areas.
Correct. And with guns, to say, obviously we take guns. At the end of the day, when those guns are done, we take those guns and we ship them off. And they get melted. So they go up to a secure facility, in Florida. They all get melted and they get turned into rebars for construction.
Interesting. I didn't know
that. Handguns are one of those things that are never sold, never given out to people. They're destroyed, and that's what the law requires us to do.
But with the guns, when they do come in, are they tested at all, or are they just thrown in a box and wait for trial?
Yes and no, depending on the circumstances. Again, so again. Deputy goes out on the street, arrests somebody who has a gun. The deputy obviously has to prove that is a real gun. So that gun is taken, is sent to forensics, it's sent to FDLE. They do ballistic tests on it. They go through something called NIBIN, which is basically a fingerprint for handguns. They process that gun. At the end of all of that, the gun ends up with us, and it's up to us at that point to destroy it. One of the things that, again, as a cost savings to our citizens, is that at the sheriff's office, we constantly keep an eye out on those guns. So we issue guns to our deputies. And so if we get a gun in that we think will be valuable to issue to one of our deputies, send it out to the gun range. They go on and they also reissue those guns. And so, rather than the sheriff's office going out and spending $500, $1,000 on a gun, we take that drug gun and it's a savings to our community.
So going back to the whole trial thing, so let's say somebody commits a crime, the evidence comes here, it sits for a year and a half. Now it's time for trial. What happens then? I mean, does the evidence get taken to the courthouse? Do the lawyers get to come and look at it? How does that work?
So let's take it one step at a time. So before the trial, the defense attorney often wants to look at the evidence available. And so the deputy, the detective in charge of the case will come here with the state. They'll come here with the defense attorneys. They'll look at the evidence, decide, okay, all right, you know what? Yes, we do have enough evidence here where my client is not going to get off, off the case, or you know what, the evidence is weak. So they make a determination. When it goes to trial, if that evidence is needed, the case agent, the deputy, the detective will come here, check out the evidence, take it to court, present it in court. And at that time, the court either keeps it or they give it back to the deputy to return to us. So, what happens there depends on circumstances.
So when evidence is either destroyed or donated, let's go to the destroyed part. Is it just thrown out, or where does it go when it's time to get rid of evidence?
Let's assume for a minute it's something that is going to get destroyed. And so what happens is we have a process that evidence gets put into a container. The container gets taken out to the landfill, and we witness the landfill basically destroying that evidence. So we'll take it out to the landfill. They got these big boulders out there. I mean, they just run them over and crush them and make sure that it gets destroyed.
Okay.
And so we don't throw out anything that somebody else could pick out of the ground. Bottom line, once it gets destroyed, it's destroyed.
And then other stuff is donated. You said there's certain nonprofits around town.
There's certain nonprofits, and our biggest one in that area is bicycles, because again, bicycles are easy. Bicycles, we donate. If it's a nonprofit, we get a phone call or we get a letter, and there's again process involved in getting it, but we do donate it to those nonprofits, and they auction them, they give them to their members, whatever they do with it, that's fine.
We don't auction anything, do we?
We do not. And so what happens is, it's probably been 15, 20 years ago, the law was changed, where we can do an auction, but it is such a tedious and costly process. It's really not worth us doing it. The cost to our citizens, I don't think it's worth it.
Gene, how did you end up here?
That's a very good question. My background is I'm a police officer, and I retired and was sitting at home looking for a job. I saw the posting.
Where were you a police officer at?
Orlando Police Department.
Okay,
yes,
all right.
I come from the Orlando Police Department.
All right. Well, we'll take OPD officers
absolutely,
over here too, I guess.
Yeah. And so, when I left, I retired. I came here, and this job was posted. I applied for it, and I ended up here.
And you haven't been here that long.
I've been here about 2 years.
Okay. All right. What was it about this that wanted you to come back and work?
It's it's a good job. Let me say this: I have two of my supervisors here. Without these two ladies, I'd be dead in the water.
Making sure you don't say something wrong.
Oh, they're over there. They'll throw pencils and stuff at me. But no, I have an exceptional crew here. They know more about this than I will ever know. They teach me every day something new, and it is good because we have a really good working relationship. We try to just do the right thing for the right reason all the time, and so.
How many people do work here? Is it a big crew because you got to go all over the county? Like, do you go pick stuff up, or do they bring it to you?
There are 25 employees assigned here.
Okay.
We have one person we call the route person. So that route person, theoretically speaking, Monday morning goes and starts at location 1, goes through location 9, and then it brings it back here. So we have a route, we have a schedule. They go out and pick, as an example, the big sector. So sectors 2. Sector 2 is that substation out on the east side of town. They go there every day. Aviation, they may only go there once a week because, again, aviation is not going to have. We have a substation or a small one out at the mall of the Florida Mall.
Yeah.
They'll go out there once or twice a week. Often, and more importantly, we also have a person that is on call 24/7. So we're doing a search warrant out on the street. There's 20 deputies out there. They have a bunch of property. We get calls a couple months back. We went out, we took our trucks, we loaded up about 4 or 5 trucks full of stuff. We got so much stuff in there, we had to go get a container to put it all.
I heard this was from like a pawn shop or something like
correct,
that.
correct.
Yeah. So I mean, it just ranges for all kinds of things when it comes to evidence.
Right.
You mentioned the 24-hour on call, and so that brings up my question of, let's say, and I've been on this, I was on a ride along one time where somebody, he overdosed, and so maybe it's not a good example. Let's say there's a homicide in the woods or something like that, and there's evidence sort of scattered around the body.
Right.
Whose job is it to bring it here? Is it the deputies, or is it the forensics folks, or is there another company?
So again, to answer, yes. Okay. Depending on the circumstances, if it's a homicide, typically forensics go out. They will collect the evidence. So if forensics go out, they collect the evidence. they'll eventually bring it here, but there's a longer process. They do their thing and eventually here. If it's a regular call, the deputy, again, let's assume for a minute the deputies go out and they have a grow house, and they have a I'm going to exaggerate, a million marijuana plants. Once they determine this is illegal, then it's our job to decide how do we get it here, foreseeably, go out and rent a semi-truck to load it up and bring it here. And so we stay on our toes and try to keep up with, what do we need to get that evidence from there to here. As I said, when we did that search warrant, we had so much property, we just did not have the room in the warehouse. And so we had to go out and we bought a container. So we have a big container full of property out there.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. I know you've only been here about a year and a half or two. Is there anything in here that really surprises you, or something that's come in where you say, wow, I never thought I'd ever see that as evidence?
No, not really. No.
All right. How about me? Is there something that you think would surprise me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember, I've been a police officer almost 40 years.
True.
So I think I've seen it all twice.
All right.
But yes, there are some things in here that even to me it says that's odd why it's here.
Can you tell me a few?
Rocks.
Rocks.
We seem to collect more rocks than I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
But when I look at the homicide room, some of the stuff in there, you always wonder.
Oh, I'm being told that there's a coffin in here somewhere.
There is a coffin in here. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, there is a coffin.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I think there's a ghost in this building.
Oh. First of all, we should have started with a haunted version. Why do you think there's a ghost in the building?
I have been here at night, 5 o'clock in the morning. I hear people walking, hear people talking.
Really?
That aren't here. And so it's a little on the freaky side, but no, if you think about it, we have one.
Okay.
We really do. And well, there's a leg. One day I'll give you a funny came in here one night about 5:30 in the morning. I'm walking around. There's a leg sticking out at one of the shelves.
A real leg, like a human leg?
No, it's a plastic. It's a prosthetic leg, but you don't expect that. Walking into a warehouse. So.
Huh. And you mentioned like the homicide room. I didn't go up there, but I'm told that it's a large area, and that's a lot of evidence that is kept for a very long time, because you had said these are the serious crimes that we have a cold case unit. We've talked to them here on the podcast, and they might come across some evidence or something that comes up 25 years later, and I'm sure that evidence still has to be here.
That evidence is here. Yeah, anything related to a homicide that we have is here. One of the things about, obviously, back in the 40s and the 50s, we were still, the evidence unit existed. How meticulous were they? What kind of evidence did they collect? And so, we are better at collecting evidence today than we were 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you look at some of those old cases, and you may have very little information, and nowadays we tend to over collect, which is a good thing. I mean, I'd rather have too much evidence than not enough.
Is there enough space here for all the evidence that comes in?
No, we are in the process of looking for a new building. The county a couple years back gave us some money for us to buy a new building. The problem that we're having is the warehouse size that we need. As soon as it goes up on the market, companies like Amazon and those kind of warehouse, because that's our competition for warehouse space.
Yeah, we don't got Amazon money.
We ain't got Amazon money, right? And Amazon can go out and spend $100 million in a building where we can't.
Would you keep this building though, or would you have to move everything to a brand new building?
Our goal is to move everything to a new building.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an undertaking. I think I told you I just did a move for my personal. I bought a house, and it's taken me a month to move my house. So I can only imagine how long it's going to take us to move here.
Do you have any idea? And once again, I'm putting you on the spot here. Do you have any idea some of the oldest things that are here? Are there things from the 30s, 40s, 50s?
I think we have homicides up there from the 40s. I think 1946 is a number that I remember. And then I remember that when I don't look at the physical evidence. All I get is a package. I don't, very seldom is there a reason for us to open and look in the package.
Okay.
So we go by, there's an envelope, and the envelope says XYZ. That's what's in the envelope.
And that's just, once again, it was a homicide or a serious crime, and you keep it. Okay, we're being told there's some photos, and so you just,
Right.
but you don't know. Maybe
Right.
something comes
Right.
up, and you don't want to throw something like that away
Right.
that you could possibly solve a case.
Well, again, homicides we don't throw. The rule of homicides, we keep it for 99 years.
Okay.
Okay, so realistically speaking, it's a lifetime. We're not going to have anything here from 1919, if I'm doing my math right, and if we did, there is no reason to get rid of it.
All right, Gene. So also during my tour, there was a bunch of boxes way up high on a shelf that was pointed out to me that has some significance here in Orange County because it's related to the Casey Anthony trial and the homicide of Kaylee Anthony, her daughter.
Correct.
But it was sort of in a special spot. Is that on purpose?
That's on purpose because it's obviously it's a very touching case. It's a case that affected a lot of not just the sheriff's office, but all the citizens in the county. And so we keep that case separate. It is still an open case, I think, because obviously we did not get a conviction on that.
Yeah.
And so we keep all that evidence separate. There was a lot of it. This was one of the biggest cases that we worked in a while, and there was a lot of information that came in, and all of that stuff we still have.
And as I said, it's way up on a shelf, and it's not marked or anything. You would never know it was that unless you knew. And there's dozens of boxes it looked like.
Right.
And but I was also told that will probably stay here forever.
Absolutely. It's one of those cases that again affects so many people that I would hate for us a year, 2 years, 20, 100 years down the line to say, hey, we have some information that we need on this, and the evidence department got rid of the evidence.
And this all goes back to the changing of technology.
Absolutely.
What we don't have now,
Absolutely.
we have in 50 years, 100 years,
Absolutely.
and they might be able to use some of that, not just
Right.
from that case,
Right.
but all these other ones, and we may be able to solve some of these cases
Right.
and give some closure to some families.
Absolutely.
And so before we go, I want to go back to when things sort of get donated here. And,
Sure.
And you had mentioned a lot of times bikes go to different charitable organizations. Is that the only thing that goes to charity, the bikes, or is there other stuff too?
Theoretically speaking, we could give anything to charity. Some of the stuff is kind of difficult to do, but as an example, the jewelry that we have, I
didn't even get into that. That's all in.
We have jewelry and valuables that we get. Okay, that most of the stuff goes to the Safety Village, which is a charity. But let me add that when we talk about charities, it must be a legitimate charity. It must be a 501c3 charity. There's some paperwork and process and signatures and all that stuff that we get. So it's not just somebody coming in and say, "Hey, I'm a charity, give me some stuff."
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work that way. Again, we'd love to give it away, but we need to make sure that we give it away in compliance with what the law requires and in the best interest of our community.
What do we get out of that? Is it like a tax write-off? I mean, obviously we want to help the community, but I think you said something like we can raise funds as well with some of the items we have here. It's not just saving taxpayer dollars sometimes.
Correct. And so what happens is, as an example, if we have, I used the example of the TV earlier, there is some equipment that is kept by the sheriff. There is some equipment that the sheriff donates to other law enforcement agencies.
Okay.
And so as an example, I was at a smaller department at one time and we needed some handguns. We didn't have the budget. So I reached out to the sheriff and I said, hey, I need some handguns. And through that process, the sheriff lent handguns to that smaller agency.
Okay.
And so it happens all the time. We have other governmental agencies out there. We had a generator in the back, a brand new generator. Normally, we would have taken that generator out to the landfill and destroyed it.
And that seems like a waste to me.
To me, it seems like a waste too. One of the things that I have a hard time, in my personal life, I'm a cheapskate, and so I try to recycle as much as we can. We give, you use the little audio cards, the little SD cards.
Yeah.
We get tons of those. We give those to forensics. Those are equipment that they don't have to purchase. We give to other agencies. We give, the generator we give to the fire department and those kind of things. We had big saws back there. Those, they're $1,500, $2,000 saws. Donate those to the fire departments and those kind of things. And so we're always looking for a way. If I wouldn't do it in my personal life, I don't do it here.
Yeah.
And again, I'm cheap by nature, and so we do that. I give you a perfect example. We needed a building in the back. We have a very hot warehouse, and so we had a couple air conditioners that we were getting ready to throw out, and so what we did is we took a couple air conditioners. I don't know if they showed you the tent back there.
I did see the tent.
We made a tent for our guys to work. That tent, by the end of the day, I think the tent cost me $500.
Oh.
If I would have had a building built back there, it'd have been $20,000 and $30,000.
Oh yeah.
And so that's money that we did. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we follow what the law says we must do. There's a Florida statute in there. Most people don't realize this. It's a couple pages, and it says you must do A, B, C, D, E, and there's a list of things we do, and we follow the laws, obviously, and the rules.
Well, Gene, thank you so much for bringing me out here. I learned a lot about evidence, and thanks again. And to everybody listening, we'll see you next time on Behind the Star.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.